Hey guys, Z here. Do you remember this unit? Do you wish you could forget this unit? It's been roughly a week and a half since her debut and it's going absolutely fantastic. Or about as fantastic as end action bonuses go, at least. I think everyone expected her to be really good because of it, and I'd imagine a fair bit of people aren't having fun against her. But one aspect I think went under the radar a bit was her synergy with other units, because we were mostly focused on the bonus specifically, which, to be fair, the bonus was the largest aspect about her, so it's understandable why. But the ways people can use it against other players is really something else. The recent Summoner Duels R season just ended, and it was heavily populated by teams consisting of Heimdallr, Arena Chrom, and Summer Celica. And to say it was one of the most dreadful Summoner Duel seasons we've ever had would not be communicating that message well enough. Isn't that every Summoner Duel season you're probably typing? And while normally I would agree, it's definitely not helped by the map and captain skill choices, but it probably wouldn't have changed that much in the end. The combination of these three made me realize that as it currently stands, the meta is about as homogenized as it'll get, or I guess solved in this case, which isn't exactly great for a game mode like this, although the mention of Summer Celica might be surprising to some. Let's talk about that. Summer Celica is definitely one of the weirder units we got this book, and by weird, I mean with her viability in general. She debuted back on the June Summer banner, and to say the reception to her was mixed would be putting it nicely. Her whole shtick is that she could attack from 3 spaces away with Miracle and Brave hits, but at the cost of reducing her damage output to 60% of its original total. It was that cut damage that made her a bit iffy, and led to the conversation of whether she could actually deal with far save armors or not. It definitely wasn't helped by her harmonic button being locked out of her PRF at the time, which was more of a red herring than anything else, because it wasn't a very good button to begin with, nor did it really affect her viability as a whole. I think it was a combination of a bunch of weird decisions on the surface of the unit that put off a lot of people from her, including myself. She definitely wasn't unusable, but she definitely needed a lot of help, and despite how much she's used nowadays, I don't really regret saying she wasn't that good when she initially dropped. Because of her usage increasing over the past couple months, there's definitely been a lot more talks about her being better than people gave her credit for on debut, or how she was underrated, but I don't really agree with the sentiments overall. Celica on debut compared to Celica now are basically two entirely different units. A lot changed in the span of 4 months, and she definitely aged into the role she finds herself in now, which is important to highlight as it's the reason why we're at this point. You have a lot of people phasing out Far Save for Briar Physical Save, as there's a distinct lack of mages and staves in Summoner Duels right now. This means she could swing on the less tanky units more often, although we do have some units in Halloween Freya, Bridal Julia, the aforementioned Celica, etc. More people would rather run Briar Physical Save because it just covers a lot more unit types that do enter combat, not stuff like Loki who's just kind of hanging out in the back all the time. There's the addition of Corrin's Terrain that makes the prospect of attacking from 3 spaces away a lot more desirable, so you can avoid vert and get around to ice. The ice part is especially nice since it's always set 2 spaces away, which doesn't affect her. The vert can also be fixed with legendary Sakura support too. But the most important addition that really took Celica from fine to more of a powerhouse was Arena Chrom. In fact, Arena Chrom is more or less the entire foundation to the monstrosity meta team that is around the game, because wow, this unit really does everything. Extra actions, bonus copying and sharing, amazing damage output, absurd support. He's just that guy. And to be quite H with y'all, I don't think it's a stretch to say he's one of those legacy editions like Legendary Sakura, where what he provides is that good and potentially everlasting. And we're seeing that even more now because of the addition of Heimdallr. You could pass her bonus to either Celica or Chrom, then reposition so that both of them can have the status. But even before accounting for Heimdallr, Chrom was already able to give Celica extra movement, effectively making her into a 7 range unit, giving her additional true damage and helping her charge AoE specials so that her damage output is a lot more consistent, and additional statuses that could help her get around stuff like Miracle, damage reduction, and so on. It was already pretty strong before that point, especially if you use Lauritaoliverauwu alongside them to ensure more favorable combats. It's really hard to imagine how Arena Chrom will fall off, but at the same time, I don't think I really want to imagine how he falls off. A lot of the at the time relevant Chrom ults lasted a long while because his repositioned Gale Force and additional gimmicks were that valuable. Legendary didn't really have the support aspect, but his extra action reposition was good enough for a while, to the point where people were still using it before his remix. Valentine's Chrom had pulse support and a solid button with really great combat capabilities, so he was also around for a lengthy period of time. Brave Chrom lasted ages thanks to everything he could copy, although he's not remotely as good as he once was, due to having more powerful units in the game. And Fallen Chrom, who existed, and yeah, he was good at that, I think. Arena Chrom is just another one of those units that just does does way too much and is more or less the defining aspect of what's currently the most toxic Summoner Duels team in the entire game, and it's also to a point where unit diversity has fallen off a cliff and homogenization is even more prevalent. There isn't that much room against teams like this since they can cover every base necessary, especially now with Heimdallr, who is an active participant in the madness. Heimdallr, who does the funny end turn status thing, and by funny I mean aggravating. Although I guess in a cosmic sort of way it can be pretty funny. Not that I find it funny, but you know, you might find somebody that does. The end turn status is what's really propelling Chrom and Celica to another level, since they effectively have free means of setting up their threat range with almost nothing to really contest them besides Summer, Thor, and Loki. Although it will depend on the map because the latter usually isn't good until turn 2 in most cases, and Thor only works one time. You can also decharge the status and whatnot with Lin Ring at least, and once a unit with the status swings it does go away, but the combination of all these units makes fighting against them genuinely frustrating and perplexing. And beyond that, you still have Heimdallr with even more support utility thanks to her PRF slot that can inflict a bunch of penalties that slow down an enemy team even further. And because she's a cavalry unit, you can run shadow skills for even more positioning if need be. Heimdallr really does everything she needs to do. And despite these three units really doing wonders with one another, they still have additional tools at their disposal to work with. Celica, Chrom, and Heimdallr are only 3 units. That still leaves 2 additional team slots for any other unit, which can be something like a Savior or Corrin specifically for more terrain, Sakura for more hit and run utility, Summer Thor to further punish the opponent, and anything else that probably released in the last few weeks or so. Maybe even Laurita if you're still unsure about being able to beat saves despite the Arena Chrom support. I can't imagine she'd be short on options at this point though. Celica basically has everything that's allowed her to get to this point as is, and despite how this may be coming off, she's still an important piece to it all as she's the only unit in the game right now with this type of threat range. It may be propped up by other units which may not look that great in the grand scheme, but you really can't get the same result from any other unit. And with the combination of Summer, Celica, Arena Chrom, Heimdallr, as well as Corrin terrain, and the rise of Briar physical save, you end up to where we're at today. A team that can effectively cover an entire map and have very little means of being punished for it. And that's why Summoner Duels R is not that fun. I know Fire Emblem PvP isn't exactly a fan favorite thing, especially in Phase Case where it's centered around gacha, but I actually do like Summoner Duels for the most part. Not Summoner Duels R, that mode really stinks to be quite H. Because it's centered around gacha, it means the game mode is constantly evolving, which is a contributing factor as to why I both like it and dislike it at times. The rotating maps and captain skills alongside newer additions keeps it fresh, but it equally makes it frustrating at times because new types of metas and being somewhat difficult to keep up with at times, which can make the mode not really that fun to play if you're missing that one specific unit or two. That can definitely come up, especially in Summoner Duels S, where you need 20 units and 4 pre-made teams to go into the mode, and you can technically have one team that's just there to fill out slots, but you'll definitely feel the difference, especially now where everybody can just have 4 competently strong teams if you just have anything from the last 2 to 3 months. It's kind of hard these days, and to be honest, I don't really blame people for not liking it because of those factors. Sometimes it's just more fun not having to account for every little thing in the game and being punished because you might have forgotten about one specific effect that, oops, you're done, the end. But that's also why I like Summoner Duels S specifically, because despite the larger barrier of entry, it does feel a bit more strategic since you can ban teams and units you'd rather not fight. Otherwise, you're kind of at the mercy of RNG thereafter because you really can't prepare for everything on one team. Although I guess that's a bit more debatable now with Chrom, Celica, Heimdallr. And with Summoner Duels R, it's kind of hit a point where it feels like the meta is entirely solved because the mode is effectively comprised of a dozen units at most. And for the purposes of this video, the Celica, Chrom, Heimdallr core that just does everything. You have obscene levels of threat range thanks to Celica and Chrom being able to pass her additional movement with the Sigurd ring. Celica with Chrom support could get a pre-church AoE special and additional true damage that basically lets her secure more kills much more often, something she would have otherwise struggled with without Laurita. Chrom himself is also a very competent combat unit who could provide additional actions during a turn and pass the Heimdallr bonus to Celica, meaning not only do both of them have obscenely large threat range, but they can also be protected by units that can otherwise attack into them. Him also being a bow unit means what Celica can't deal with res-wise can probably be dealt by Chrom defense-wise. Heimdallr beyond the end turn status can provide even more means of slowing down an enemy team with her stall and debuff support. What you're essentially left with is a core of units that can do everything obscenely well. There's not a whole lot you could do to fight them because most of the team's weaknesses are covered by something. And honestly, I'm more intrigued than upset by the entire thing. Now, granted, it's not fun to fight, and I don't think it will ever be fun, but this entire thing really shows how much there is to account for in this game. I don't think any of this stuff would have been remotely threatening or that annoying if Chrom didn't exist, but even without him, there's still so many mechanics in the game that probably would have made it work well enough anyway. There's just so much you have to be aware of these days. I can imagine the developers sometimes falling into that particular issue, what with the game having over 1,300 units so far. Granted, over 1,000 of them aren't that usable, but still, they continue to add all sorts of new mechanics into the game that, in some respect, does keep the game interesting. Despite how it may seem, I think it's really cool when they experiment constantly, but it is a give and take. Sometimes you'll get fun stuff like Crid being able to inflict ice terrain on a foe, and sometimes you'll get end turn statuses. With how old the game is, I can at least respect them for trying in that department, and it's not like these things are going to last forever anyway. Hopefully. Maybe they'll release an 8 range unit soon so we don't have to worry about the 7 range unit anymore. But kidding aside, or I guess praying they don't do that aside, it really just goes to show how crazy Faye has gotten. I guess that's just what happens when they have to account for every unit in the game, but they also do this to themselves by making these effects in the first place. Complexity really does keep the game fresh, but they do go over that fine line between keeping things interesting and frustrating at times, as now seen with Heimdall Chrom Celica teams. They'll release a hard counter to it sooner or later, probably. But yeah, I can't imagine that many people care, considering most people don't play the mode. But hey, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about at least, and maybe you learned something from this entire thing. Hopefully something positive, question mark? That said, if there's anything to take out of this entire video, it should be this. Summoner Duels R is really bad. You can always do one match and get the rewards, which is fine enough. And if you really want to play something, then well, Octopath Zero comes out in less than a month. Just go play that when it drops.